Welcome to the Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Ancient wisdom, modern life, and the way. Visit us online at taoananda.com or find us on all the socials. Now, the Modern Taoist.
And hello, and welcome to a Modern Taoist, the Modern Taoist. The. I keep calling it a because I'm the one sitting here, but it's the Modern Taoist. And I appreciate you coming along and partaking in whatever it is we're doing here. And I hope you're enjoying it so far, if you're getting something out of it. I did get an actual comment on one of the episodes, and it was kind of interesting. I'll explain it really quickly. This commenter said, why do you keep saying Laozi instead of Laozi? Laozi is kind of the modern. I'm old school, that's why. Basically, that's why. It was the old original translation into English was Laozi, and that's where I came up, where I was brought up. Laozi is how everybody kind of refers to him now. Like Confucius, everybody, his name is Kongzi. And that's not his, Laozi's not his name anyway. Laozi, that's not his name. It's a title. It means old master is what it means. And he's also identified with the persona of Lao Don. And Lao Don translates to the guy with the long ears, basically, the long-eared one. And traditional accounts of him make him somewhat of a legendary guy that was kind of mad and pissed off at society, and specifically in the lack of interest of his teachings. And so he got on an ox and left. I love that dude. One of these days, if you're interested in the history of any of this, we'll hit that every now and then. But I like the fact that he didn't have enough. This is why a lot of Taoist stuff leans right into modern stuff, because he didn't have enough followers, so he bolted. He got on an ox and said, "The hell with you, I'm gone." Today, I want to talk about something that repeats itself or comes up a lot in Taoist talk and Taoist text and Taoist tradition, and that is the paradox of less is more. The paradox of less. It's been chasing me around my whole life, this concept. Every time I caught myself buying another guitar, adding another app, giving myself one more reason to wake up early or stay up late. Lao Tzu said, in pursuit of the Tao, every day something must be dropped. Okay, maybe the problem isn't that I need better systems, maybe I need few. And maybe you do too. So that's kind of where this topic is coming from. The paradox of less, not the Instagram version of minimalism. That's an aesthetic. Okay, that's borderline. Sometimes the minimalism trend can be borderline cuckoo bird. Okay, I knew a woman one time, and she her entire existence, she didn't want to own more than 100 things. And so someone would give her a gift and she'd have to go to her house and throw something away. And I get that. I understand that. But the strictness of it was what was cuckoo bird. We're talking about more like something, the kind of distraction that actually gives you space. The kind that makes dinners with people you love possible again. The kind that lets your nervous system unclench because you finally stop trying to outrun your whole life. We're talking about if you've been feeling stretched thin, smarter phone, dumber days. This episode is probably for you. So we'll jump into that here in a few minutes. I want to remind you, if you could do me the solid of liking or subscribing or following or whatever you have to do on your particular app, that would be great. If you would like to have a version of this on YouTube, although it's not a video version, I don't know that we're going to do that, but YouTube does have a podcast option as well. If it helps you to follow there, it helps you to subscribe there. It would help us as well. You can also go to our website, Daoananda, DAOANANDA. That by the way, that means the path of bliss. That's not my name. My name is Kit Man, and this is the Modern Taoist, and here we go. Chapter 48 of the Tao Te Ching is what I want to talk about today. It begins with one of those lines that sounds really simple, but it sneaks up on you the more you think about it. And the chapter begins with the line, "In pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In pursuit of the Tao, every day something is dropped." And this is the great paradox that we're going to talk about. Because in the modern world, we're told every single day that more is better, right? More skills, more certifications, more apps, more productivity, more hustle. The person with the longest resume wins. The one who can juggle the most tasks, stay up the latest, wake up the earliest, cram more hours in the day, that is the person that we celebrate. But Laozi, I'll pick one in a minute, isn't playing that game. In fact, he points to the opposite. The way to align with the Tao isn't about adding more, it's about removing what doesn't belong. Subtracting, stripping away, letting go. And this is the kind of message that, it doesn't really work that well in an advertising slogan or in a mission statement at work. You don't see a lot of mission statements hanging on that says, do less. That doesn't sell a lot of fitness memberships. Give up. That's not going to be printed on a coffee mug at your office. There's not a book in the self-help section that says, the hell with it. Forget it. But here's the irony and the paradox. When you take Laozi seriously, you realize that doing less doesn't mean apathy or laziness or weakness. It means clearing away everything that doesn't serve on what truly matters. So think about the culture we live in. We're constantly in the pursuit of knowledge. We are chasing information like it's oxygen. Every single day, something new gets added. Another headline, another video, another email, another notification. We're stuffed to the gills with knowledge or information. But it's not really that. It's data that is pretending to be knowledge. So we get overwhelmed. We get scattered. We can't see the forest anymore because we're buried under 1,000 leaves. I should put that on a t-shirt too. You need to contrast all of this with the Taoist way. Every day something is dropped. That's discipline. That's subtraction. That's the slow, it's not a quick process. It's a slow process. It's a slow practice, as a matter of fact, of letting go what doesn't matter so that you can pay attention to what does. So I'm going to share with you a story in a minute about a friend of mine that came to me one time. And he wasn't asking for some monk on a mountaintop. He was an advertising radio sales guy. Someone whose entire career was based on more. And the weight of that was starting to crush him. And we're going to unpack the paradox of less and how Laozi's teaching applies to the modern world. Doesn't mean emptiness. It doesn't mean loss. Less means life. Life with space. Life with focus. So when I talk about this, I do not have to give you some ancient, dusty Chinese example. I can think about this friend of mine. He was a radio sales guy at a radio station that I worked for. And on the surface, the dude had everything that you're supposed to want. He made more money than anybody in the radio station. He knew everybody in town. If a business wanted airtime, he was the guy they came to. They didn't even think. It was just, he was synonymous with success. And when your life is built around advertising, you live in a world of more ad slots, more clients, more numbers to hit every quarter. And when you hit those numbers, guess what? What happens when you hit your numbers? They raise them. There's never a finish line, never. There's always another call, another pitch, another account to chase down. He bought into it. He thought that if he just kept saying yes, kept stacking more and more onto his plate, one day he'd cross some invisible finish line and finally feel satisfied. But that ain't the way it works, kids. Because the better you do, the more they want. So the opposite happened. Of course it did. The more he said yes, the fuller his life, well, not his life, the fuller his calendar became, and the emptier his life became. He started missing dinners with his wife. He stopped seeing his kids so much. He'd get into bed completely exhausted, but he wouldn't be able to sleep because he wasn't doing anything meaningful. He was chasing targets that simply reset the next morning. It was like playing a video game where the enemy never goes away. And then something weird happened, because one day in the middle of all this, I didn't talk to the guy all that much, to be honest with you. I worked in a big radio station. We had a big staff. I was the morning guy. I got there at 4 a.m. I left at noon. I very rarely interacted with the salespeople at all, except to do some creative thing that they had sold. And then word had gotten around the office some way. Well, not some way. I always had Taoist quotes hanging around. But anyway, word had gotten around that I was into that stuff, quote unquote, and he was curious. And he didn't come to me because he thought I was some kind of a monk or something. He didn't come looking for enlightenment. He came because he could feel his body. He could feel his soul. He was drowning in more, and he was just curious if there was some piece of wisdom out there that would help him, the way he put it, to relax. And the first thing that popped into my head was subtraction. Chapter 48, the idea that maybe the solution wasn't to add more efficiency hacks. Maybe the solution was less. And at first he was like, dude, if I do less, I lose everything. Because that right there is the reflex that most of us have, because we equate less with failure. And I said, no, I'm not explaining this right, or you're not understanding. Let me explain it. So we chatted a little longer. And I said, look, just test what I'm saying. Say no to one meeting. Hand one of your clients off to someone else. If you have 15 clients and you're only serving the top 8 because they're the ones that are bringing in the most money, hand 7 of those off. I said, instead of going to happy hour after work with all these other people, take a walk. Don't drink to numb yourself. I wasn't criticizing alcohol. I was simply showing him what he was doing. And pretty soon, after about 4 months, he looked better. He looked lighter because he was realizing that his fear of less was an illusion. It wasn't loss. It was freedom. And that's the paradox. When you finally let some things go, when you finally start dropping things instead of piling them up, life doesn't shrink, it opens. It gets bigger. He didn't quit his job. This wasn't a fairy tale, but he changed his relationship with it. He realized that chasing more was killing everything else. And he was finally able to find some space because of this emptiness for his family, for breathing, for being a human being again. Because, look, less feels radical, right? For most people, less feels like a threat. Let's be honest. If you're judged by your output, if you're judged by how many hours you work, how many projects you manage, how many steps you take, how many calories you burn, how many likes you collect on a post, everything that we do is quantified now. Everything is tallied. There is a scoreboard about everything. I have only been doing this podcast this is the 5th episode. If you saw the amount of emails that I get that want to tell me what my score is, it's ridiculous. No, I'm not going to buy your app that tells me what my analytics are. That might be important to someone that cares about followers, but that's not the way we do this. Every day, something is dropped. To the West, that sounds irresponsible. Our culture worships more, so it sounds even immoral. But let's test the idea. Has more really made us happier? Has it made us more alive? Look around. The evidence says, no, sir. We're more stressed. There's more. We're more distracted. There's that word again, more. We're more medicated. More. More disconnected from our families. More hasn't solved anything. That's why when I say the way forward is backward, it's downward, it's subtraction. Well, then people are like, well, that's crazy talk. But listen, let's do some ancient Chinese Taoist philosophy. Let me lay something on you, okay? Think of nature. A tree doesn't just grow forever, okay? It doesn't just grow until it goes to space, for God's sake. It sheds its leaves. It lets go. A river doesn't expand without end. It narrows, it curves, it disappears under the ground. Even your own body understands this. Your own body gets the concept of less. How so? When you inhale, that's more. When you exhale, that's less. That cycle, that reversal, is the very thing that keeps you alive. If you were only taking in more and not exhaling less to the less, you know what I mean? If you're only bringing in and not releasing, so why do we imagine that other aspects of life would be any different? Why do we think we can inhale endlessly without ever exhaling? That answer, right after this, no, I'm kidding. That answer right now is fear. Because we are terrified of less. We've been trained to equate it with failure. Taoism teaches, however, that emptiness isn't nothingness. Emptiness is potential. An empty cup is the one that can finally hold water. It's the pause between the notes that make the music. That's why less feels radical. because it's not just about rearranging your schedule or dropping a few tasks. It's a whole different way of seeing the world. It's about trusting that when you let go, you're not falling into a void. You're falling into life. So less isn't loss, less isn't weakness, less is alignment with the way things actually work. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Sometimes you'll forget it. You'll stray and you'll forget and you'll start acquiring and you'll start cramming things in. But what do we talk about all the time? Then it becomes about noticing, and noticing that you've begun to do it again. You realize that more is never the answer. And please try to put this into a context of not necessarily about material things. We tend to process this stuff by thinking, oh, he means I shouldn't get more dishes because I already have a place setting of enough. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about material stuff. I'm talking about the things that you allow to pile on. Here's the catch, though. You're going to hate this, right? This is the part that's the challenge. Because once you start doing this, the world is not going to applaud you. The world is going to resist. This is why Taoists are rebels. This is why Taoists are always been considered radical rebels. Because the world doesn't want that. It's what happened to my friend, the advertising guy. As soon as he started saying no to extra meetings, people noticed. His manager even said, yeah, you're losing your edge there, aren't you there, buddy? His co-workers even, oh, he's burning out. He's burning out. Even his family at first was suspicious. Why are you home so early? Something go wrong? Did you get fired? Because that's the cultural script. If you're not doing more, people assume you're broken, you screwed up. We're so conditioned to equate worth with busyness that when someone steps outside that pattern, it looks like laziness or failure. So, how do you deal with the pushback? First, you have to remember the other paradox. Weakness is the use of the Tao. You don't fight force with force. You don't need to argue to justify. You don't need to convince anyone that you're right. You just live it and let your life speak for itself. He didn't launch into lectures about Taoism at the office. He didn't print out chapter 48 and tape it to the break room wall. He just stopped running himself into the ground, and over time, he seemed calmer. People noticed he wasn't as frazzled, that he had energy at the end of the day, that he had stopped drinking to numb his stress. You understand, you have to learn to sit with the discomfort that others are going to throw at you. Because when you stop living by more, you start forcing other people to confront their own addiction to it, even subconsciously, because it makes them uncomfortable. But here is the key, you guys. That's not your burden to fix. Okay? Making them uncomfortable is a them problem. When you trust the Tao, you trust that less isn't just some kind of personal preference, but a natural law. The tide goes out. The moon disappears. Winter shows up. The Tao isn't always subtracting. You're not fighting the world when you do less. You are aligning with it. And in that alignment, in time, you will speak louder than any defense you could offer. So there is no need to justify verbally, vocally to anyone else. Sure, you're going to get, hey, buddy, what are you burned out there? Just smile. Just say, no, just rearranging. I'm all good in the hood. Don't worry about it. Because that will be them. That will be their uncomfortableness. Because I'm telling you, you're not going to be less productive. Right? Your boss is not going to come to you and say, hey, look at your numbers. They're down. Because probably your numbers are going to go up. Because less is more. Isn't it funny how the West has taken all of these concepts and turned them into one-liners? Less is more. How many times have you heard that in your life? Right? You've probably heard that in your life 1,000 times since you were a little kid, and you probably never really quite understood what it meant. And you certainly probably never understood that it was a Taoist concept from 3,500 years ago or 2,500 years ago. So let's bring this back around a bit, okay? Chapter 48, let me read it to you. In pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In pursuit of the Tao, every day something is dropped. Less and less is done until non-action is achieved. When nothing is done, nothing is left undone. Sounds like a riddle, but really, again, as in most Taoist concepts, it's a mirror. Most of our culture built around that first half. Add more, do more, become more. Every commercial, every school system, every performance review reinforces the idea that you should always be piling something onto the stack. The second half of that line, letting go doing less, feels dangerous because if you stop adding, stop chasing, what's left? That's the paradox of less. At first glance, we're just recapping here, but I just want to remind you, at first glance, it feels like weakness or failure. But when you practice it, when you realize you're not subtracting life, you're subtracting noise. You're clearing space. And in that space, that is where the essentials begin to flow in. That's what chapter 48 is pointing out. When you do less, more of what truly matters gets done. Not because it's forced, but because you stopped cluttering the way. And here's the important reminder. This isn't just about personal sanity. It's also about balance with the world. Nature doesn't endlessly expand. Trees don't grow into the clouds. Rivers don't flood forever. Everything in the natural world knows how to return, how to rest, how to yield. And the Tao shows itself in those rhythms. When we refuse to live by those rhythms, when we insist on being different than nature, by definition, we have become unnatural. We're the ones out of harmony. So when you're listening to this and thinking, yeah, but I can't afford to do less, my family, my job, my responsibilities, I hear you. This isn't about abandoning your life. It's about reshaping it. Doing less doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right things. Trimming away what doesn't serve. Trimming away the unessentials, the non-essentials. Emptying your lungs so that you can take in a breath. And people will push back. That's natural. They'll adjust. Believe me. Your softness, your steady refusal to get swept back into the flood will become its own way of teaching, not by preaching, just by living differently. The paradox of less is when you stop trying to conquer the world, you actually begin to live inside of it. When you loosen your grip, things fall into place. When you let go of more, you discover you had enough all along. It's not just philosophy. That's survival. In the noisy, overstuffed world that we live in, the constant bombardment of more information, more data, more. Practicing less is the most rebellious, radical, kick-ass thing you can do. And that's how we'll end things today. That's how you become a modern Taoist. That's how you become a modern rebel, a peaceful warrior. Less is more, children. Thank you so much for listening to The Modern Taoist. My name is Kip Man. Please like or subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use. Please visit us at daoananda.com. That's DAOANANDA.com.org. Or we'll probably put the other spelling. I'll probably buy TAO as well, just so people don't get confused. But again, follow us on all the socials if you can find us out there. Dao Ananda is where we're listed. And until next time, this is The Modern Taoist.
Thanks for listening to The Modern Taoist with Kip Man. Visit us online at daoananda.com or find us on all the socials. Please like or subscribe on this platform. And thanks again.